Well, in this case, he did have a gun, but he didn't. He dropped it. So when he turned around, and this is what it's unclear, right? Because like, did the cop see the gun in his hand, and did he think that he was turning around with the gun? But at the same time, when he turned around, you can clearly see that he obeyed, right? He lifted up his arms, clearly didn't have a gun, and the cops still shot him. So I think what also makes this case complicated is that, he was running from away from the police. But that you shouldn't be shot because of that. But he did have a gun that he tried to dispose. But again, he did not have it when he turned around, and he still got shot.
Yeah, exactly. So he tossed the gun because there's another video that did surface that shows that he tossed it. So, but obviously
Yeah.
the cop doesn't know that. But I think that the challenge here is that if we're gonna give so much power to police officers, then we need them to be able to distinguish when a 13-year-old is putting his hands up and is doing a motion to turn around and shoot the police officer versus doing a motion just to turn around because he's giving up. It's like, is that too much to ask of these police officers?
And you're listening to the Brown Perspective. And today we wanted to talk about the unfortunate shooting of Adam Toledo. The last week or so has been brutal because there was this shooting, there was a shooting in Minnesota, there was another mass shooting in Detroit, no, I'm sorry, in Indianapolis this week. So there's just a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. But I think particularly around Adam Toledo is just that he was a 13-year-old, right? And unfortunately, as some of the images that we've seen, he was running away from the police, and he did throw away a gun. But when he turned around, his hands were clean, and he still got shot, and now he's dead.
You can see from this picture right here, you can clearly see that he doesn't have anything anymore, and this is within a second or less before he gets shot.
It was just a second, and actually, I watched the video that the Chicago police released, and it happened real quick. I mean, you can see how they were running, and then you can kind of see that yes, he was throwing something behind the fence, and then when he turned around, but you can see that immediately when he turned around, the cop shot him right away. So I think he shot him so fast that I don't think he had the ability to see whether or not he still had that gun. And you also, I think, from the angle that the camera had, you can kind of you feel for the police officer, right? Because I think any of us who have just been involved in anything that happens that quick, like there was no way for him to know that he had the gun or not. But just the way that he was a 13-year-old, and B, like his hands were empty, but it was almost like a reaction that he had when he shot him. I think he turned around, he got scared and shot, and then they did try to survive him. I mean, to resuscitate him, but it was a mortal injury.
So when this happened, or when the video was released, I read about the story, and I chose not to watch the video because I knew that it was just going to unsettle me and to bring up all these emotions. And also the reason why I didn't see it is because I had just been reading about this incident where Nazario, a black Latino, so he was mazed. And I saw this video, and this right here is so infuriating, just the power trip from this guy right here who happens to be Latino. But again, right, it doesn't, racism, white supremacy, a lot of the times you get Latinos within the system that perpetuate that. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be white to subscribe to this, to be a brutalizer. If you're a police officer, I'm sure even black police officers can get out of hand. They go on this power trip, and if you watch this video, it's so infuriating because Nazario, if he wouldn't have had the discipline that he has to remain calm and posed, he would have been shot. But he because he's in the army, so he has that discipline, so he knew how to de-escalate. But this cop was just escalating the whole time, and I think at the moment he's out of a job. But man, just having these guys out there on the street and knowing, I mean, this right here is showing people when Black and Latino people say that people don't understand what it's like to be pulled over by a cop and fear for your life. Is just because not all the cops, like, I think for the most part, most of them are going to be okay and they're not going to escalate intentionally. But police officers like this one, when they escalate the way that they do and they go on this power trip just because you refuse to either get out of the car or you start asking them questions, and they get upset. But it's your constitutional right to ask these questions and say, why am I being detained? Am I under arrest? Why do I need to get out of the car? Like sensible things that any white American would be able to pull off, and chances are they wouldn't end up getting shot or brutalized. But as a Latino or a Black person, you have the audacity to ask those things like, hey, why did you guys pull me over? What's going on? Why do I need to get out of the car? Right? Then they get so upset because you're not bowing down to and obeying their orders. So I had just seen this video, so I was a little bit on edge, just trying to process all this, and then this one came up. It may have been the same day, and I thought, man, I'm not gonna see this video. But just from reading the description, I knew already, right? Because it's very descriptive, you can tell. And then what you just said right now, that basically he's running away. The cop is chasing him, telling him to fucking stop right now. Tells him to put his hands up, which the kid does, and then shoots him. So, yeah, this is a tough one, man, because and what's so upsetting is always the excuse is always the same, that the police officers say that they thought he had a gun. And that's like a cover for everything, right? Like that they felt like they were in danger.
Well, in this case, he did have a gun, but he didn't. He dropped it. So when he turned around, and this is what it's unclear, right? Because like, did the cop see the gun in his hand, and did he think that he was turning around with the gun? But at the same time, when he turned around, you can clearly see that he obeyed, right? He lifted up his arms, clearly didn't have a gun, and the cops still shot him. So I think what also makes this case complicated is that, you know, he was running away from the police. Well, that you shouldn't be shot because of that, but he did have a gun that he tried to dispose. But again, he did not have it when he turned around, and he still got shot.
Yeah, exactly. So he tossed the gun, because there's another video that did surface that shows that he tossed it. So, but obviously the cop doesn't know that. But I think that the challenge here is that if we're going to give so much power to police officers, then we need them to be able to distinguish when a 13-year-old is putting his hands up and is doing a motion to turn around and shoot the police officer versus doing a motion just to turn around because he's giving up. It's like, is that too much to ask of these police officers? I know he was running and he was tired and he was upset and angry because these kids, he's 13. I think the other one was 17 or 18. And apparently they did shoot their gun. So obviously these kids are not like your A students in high school or junior high. They're not your model students. They're out there. They're in an alley with a gun. So questionable why they're doing that. They shouldn't be doing that. I sympathize with the police officers that have to chase them. But at some point, the training has to kick in, right? That, okay, well, you guys, this is what you guys do. You guys deal with this all the time with kids or people that have guns, with criminals. And I'm sure worse criminals than this one, right? How many white shooters have they killed? And so I guess what I'm saying is that I find it hard to believe that the police officer is he so jumpy that he thought he was going to get shot? Like, what's the history there? Maybe he's been shot at a lot in the past. Maybe this isn't his first time. Maybe if he comes out and he says, this is the 5th or 6th time that I chased some kid and he shoots me, and the last time it happened, that was almost my life, so I'm a little jumpy. I mean, is that what's going on with these officers? I want to try to understand what they're doing. I want to try to rationalize it, because it's so disconcerting and at the same time infuriating to think that any officer out there can just go out there and kill a 13-year-old, and that the only reason why they did it is just because they think that they can kill with impunity. Like, I don't want to believe that, because I don't think that's the
Yeah.
case, because that's also pretty scary if the police officers are running around like that. But at the same time, you can't just use the cover that I thought that the kid had a gun. It's a 13-year-old kid. He had already dropped the gun. How many times do 13-year-old kids that are running from the cops, how many times do they shoot at the cops? Is that common in Chicago? Like, am I missing something? Are all the kids that cops are chasing, are they shooting at the cops and killing cops? Maybe that's the environment that this cop is around. So maybe within that context, maybe that's why he's so jumpy. But it's still, right? It's like just trying to make sense of it. That's so difficult.
It is, and I think, I mean, part of it is that I think at some point it does become about survival, right? So it's fight or flight, and it becomes the survival of the cop versus the survival of the suspect. And I think perhaps even if if he didn't have, it was a reaction, like he may still have a gun, let me shoot him, right? He turned around, oh, he might have a gun, let me shoot him. But I think so. There's that survival thing, right? So I think anyone in that position may shoot the gun because they want to defend themselves, and I think their adrenaline is bumping. It's dark. They want to protect themselves. But to your point is like this is a 13-year-old, and I think obviously then we have to go back at the like why were the cops there, like the resources that the community may or may not have, right? But I think what's more infuriating is the fact that then you had the case of that 70-year-old white man or year-old Kyle Rittenhouse who had an R 15, right? So he has a big weapon. He never complied. He had killed two people, and just because he was white, he was treated very differently by the authorities. So
Yeah, it's the
I think that
the presumption of guilt, which
yes,
is put onto Black and Hispanic, especially in inner cities like this. That somehow you're automatically a threat to.
exactly, and that gets to your broader point of white supremacy of and anyone who is black, brown, Asian, or any other color is inferior, is a criminal, is out to get you. And it also the reality that as a cop, if I see someone with a rifle, I'm also going to be careful because I know that he has more firepower than I do at that particular moment in time. So I'm gonna react differently. Um,
But
and then the other thing that I wanted to say that now escapes me.
it'll come back to you. While that comes back to you, let me just also mention that if the kid turning around poses a risk to you because he could shoot you, keep him facing
Yeah, and
away
I
from
think
you.
most and I know that in most and here in LA you see all these chases all the time that you usually see the police giving instructions to once they catch the person driving the car, they usually they get them to have their hands up, to face the other way,
Mm-hmm.
to get on their
Yeah,
knees, to
and
get on
then
the floor,
yeah,
so that way there's more of a chance that the cop or cops can get on top of them and also prevent them from shooting a gun.
yeah, and so at a
And
minimum, this officer does not deserve to wear the badge. Just he's a threat to anyone out there, just because either he hasn't received the proper training or he's too jumpy. I don't know what ultimately if they're going to press charges on him for murder. I think that's going to be difficult just because police officers can always say that they felt there was a threat to their lives. And so I don't know if it'll go that far, but at a minimum, this guy should not be in any police department. Just with that simple right there, the simple actions that he took. The kid had already put his hands up. Just keep him like that. And so the kid could, he'd still be around. I'm sure he'd be in prison or he'd have a record, which is fine. I mean, like I said, this is not your role model kid if he's in a gun, because I think they responded because somebody called that they heard a gunshot, and so they did have a gun. So yeah, the kid is not your model teenager, but that doesn't mean you deserve to get shot and killed, especially when he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
he tossed the gun and then he complied.
yeah, and I think then the other piece that I remember what I wanted to say, that I think you're right. Like maybe this cop either was not ready, was not trained, has a history of it, but he is a person, right? And I think that in the video, you can see that, when he shoots him, he tries to provide first aid to try to resuscitate him, and he tries, and he's actually the one that's delivering that CPR for the first few minutes, and then he gets up and you can tell that he's shaking, right? Because I can imagine, like, if he's new on the job, and again, I don't know anything, and I don't know if anything has been released about the cop's background, but just in general, because he is a person, he realized that, you know what, I just shot somebody, and you know what, he's just a kid, and what did I do wrong, right? So I think that at the human level, I think I could see that the officer was processing that, and then he walks off as other people try to revive Adam, and then he kind of sits down, and you can kind of see his hand shaking, because that's an experience that he just killed somebody, right? Like rightfully or wrongfully, he just killed somebody, and who knows whether this is the first time that he's done that or the second time, or however, or a pattern of misconduct. But anyways, like there's that human element, and I know the other unfortunate incident was the one of Dante Bright, or Dante Wright, I'm sorry, that that he got shot in Minnesota, not far away from where the trial for George Floyd's murder is being tried. And in that video, it's crazy too, because you see that he's about to get arrested, and then he tries to get back into his car, and the police woman, in this case it was a woman officer, a female officer, said that instead of pulling the taser, she pulled the gun and shot him, right? And and she said it was an accident, right? And it could have been an accident, but again, like, it's it's not that it shouldn't have happened in the first place, right? Like, he shouldn't have been stopped for I think the reason that they gave was just the air freshener was on, either blocking his
Yeah,
his his rear view mirror, or
something's
something was
yeah.
wrong with the plates. It's just, again, like, why does it every time you stop a black or brown man, why does it have to be end up and getting pulled and shot?
Because they already assume that they're pulling over someone that's dangerous,
Yeah.
just profiling. And by the way, but that goes to the training that these departments need to offer. And there needs to be psychological evaluation to determine if these people, men and women that are applying to be police officers, if they're going to be able to handle these type of situations, like, because of the consequences, because we give them so much power to kill. Like, name any other job where if you make a mistake and somebody dies, and if you've made that mistake enough times, or if in your company, within that sector, it's happened enough times, that they wouldn't try to address it. Like, just think of a hospital where you have a doctor who has shaky hands and is doing open heart surgery, and because his hands are so shaky, cuts the wrong place and kills somebody. Obviously, that person wasn't capable of performing the jobs of a doctor, right? Because they just don't have it in them. What about another doctor that goes into the first surgery and sees blood and faints? Now the patient dies. Well, obviously, these people aren't qualified to be in that job. If you can't get your shit together and not kill someone because you're too jumpy, or because you're just human and you're making these errors, then that's the department failed you. Or maybe you shouldn't be doing that job. And we need to, instead of blaming these individuals on a one by individually, structurally there's a problem, that there needs to be better training, better way to do psychological evaluations to see if you're actually putting somebody that is going to be able to handle these situations. Because at the end of the day, these are men that are carrying guns that by law can kill someone. And if they make a mistake, if they get jumpy, a 13-year-old kid dies. And I haven't seen Fox News, or I haven't heard what's going on in the conservative, but my guess is that they'll just retreat to the age old excuse that this kid shouldn't have been in an alley to begin with. He shouldn't have had a gun because they don't have anything else. Usually they'll say, well, he should have complied. Like they always try to defend it that way. It's like, well, if all you have to do is comply with the cops and then nothing will happen to you. It's like, yeah, buddy, sure. Disregarding the fact that a lot of the times it's the cops that escalate. But they can't even say that with this kid because he complied and he raised his hands and he was still killed. So it's just unfortunate. And so some of the responsibility comes back to our community as well too. Why is a 13-year-old kid in the alley with a gun? I mean, that shouldn't happen to begin with. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been killed. He would have ended up with something in his record, which would have probably, or I don't know if he was already going down a path where he was going to have a difficult time and he was going to be in and out of prison, or he was going to have trouble with the law. Maybe that's the case. So we should do something about that our kids are not doing that, and also try to change this perception that automatically just because you're in the city, in the inner city, that black or brown automatically means that they're a threat to you. That's just structurally, I mean, these are the challenges that we have, and that we need to confront both in our community as well as in the non-black or Hispanic community.
Yeah, and I think to focus on the last piece, like it is not just on the training, and I completely agree with you that it's definitely a lot a lot more training and and filtering of the people who get to have that power is very important. But to your point, it's really about the societal structure, in that not only the white supremacy, but also the racism and discrimination. Because yes, let's talk about why was he in the streets? Was it because there were no resources dedicated to Little Village because it's mostly a Mexican immigrant or Mexican neighborhood? Is it because his father has been the victim of the same system? Was it because his father was deported? Was it because they're not invested in the education there? Is it because of the of all of the negative perceptions, his self worth? He didn't have the ability to sort of pursue other opportunities. So there's all these other things that could have led for this young man. It could have been that his parents would maybe work in, and because they have to work so hard to keep a roof over their heads, they don't have the opportunity to keep an eye over their kid. So whatever the circumstances are, there's so many things that need to be addressed, that need to be need to be addressed, and things that we need to discuss, and the hard conversations that we need to have. And I think this is where the whole defund movement comes in, because I think what they're saying is, let's defund this police. Let's take this money that is usually invested in weaponizing and militarizing the police. Let's make sure that there's better training,
Mm-hmm.
but let's also make sure that we take that money and we address the root causes of why a 13-year-old boy is in the streets anywhere in the United States. But
Yeah.
let's give them the education. Let's give his parents the opportunity. Let's give him the future that he deserves, so he and so many other people can be constructive in that, and also be, and this change the perception, to your point, that he's not just a gangbanger. Like, he's just a gangbanger because he needs to, because of the circumstances. In some ways, maybe that was the only path available to him. And I know we've had conversations previously about being in gangs and growing up in that environment. And sometimes it's just some young people cannot get away from that, right? Or in some ways they sacrifice so the few of us can continue and get an education and be in a position where we can eventually address all of these issues in the best way we can.
Yeah, at 13, you're so impressionable that more than likely he's just hanging out with bad influences, unfortunately, because that's the only thing that might be available to him in his community. Sometimes
Mhm.
there's too much pressure to resist joining in just because you'll get singled out. And if the community itself has established gangs or it's territorial, then you have to find a group for protection. At 13 years of age, all you're doing is like you're shadowing, you're getting influenced by the older ones. So no surprise here. This kid could have been a really good kid in junior high. Could have been a perfectly normal teenager, but he's still hanging around with the bad actors just because of the environment where he lives. And I mean, the parents can only do so much. Ultimately, the kid goes outside, he hangs out with kids. The older kid has a gun. Let's go shoot it somewhere just for fun. I mean, even that in itself is like, oh, just a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old came across a gun. Let's go to the alley and shoot it. It's not like they were going. I don't think they were planning to rob someone or to go and right commit some crime. Maybe they were just being kids excited to have a gun and go shoot it somewhere. And next thing you know, just again, because the assumption is they see this, they think, oh, gang member kid running away from cops got shot. I don't think so, though. I think if you look in the background of this kid, I'm sure you're gonna find a more complex story. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I agree with you about the defunding of the police, but I don't like that they call it defunding, because now conservatives and others have taken that term to mean that we want to get rid of police departments, which is not the case. We want to move the funds and reallocate them somewhere else. So don't militarize your police departments. Don't send cops out there to give speeding tickets. Like, why are cops like doing traffic, right, violations? Let's another department do it and focus more on training the cops so that they can then handle the actual like real threats that are roaming around in the neighborhood. So that's what I'm more for: reallocation of funds within the departments or within the city. If it has to come out of the police department to go to like some health services to deal with those that have mental problems, then do that. But if it's within the department and all you have to do is move funds from one part of the department to another to improve the training, then I'm for. That's what I'm for. That's what I advocate for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think for me, bottom line is that yes, it's about personal responsibility, but it's also about societal responsibility and how we as a society contributing to this type of things happening. And we need to, yes, there's thing at the personal level that we need to take responsibility for and address, but there's also things at the societal level that we need to address. And I think we need to continue to have conversations like these and the conversations that are happening across the country and the conversations that are happening in the court, right? And it will be interesting to see how the Minnesota case ends up, with the case with the police officer that shot Dante Wright goes, any case that happens around the Adam Toledo, and then so I think that we'll see how. Hopefully, my hope is that we'll be able to get at a better place by having to confront these difficult images and have these difficult conversations.
Well, I'll tell you that video footage, the fact that every single cell phone is now a high-powered camera, is great, because finally the videos come out and show people that a lot of the times these police officers are shooting our people in the community and it's unjustified. That the excuse that they had a gun or we thought they posed a threat to us, that's not always the case. And a lot of the times, and so I'm glad that the video is, unfortunately, it's still happening, but at least we have video now. There's cameras everywhere. Well, I mean, that's at least one of the silver lining of having a surveillance, like cameras everywhere. But at least, in this regard, it helps. It's a silver lining to have that.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can wrap it up. If you all out there like the content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective. We are on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Nos vemos.
Ciao.